Hello everybody, and welcome back to Writing the Rapids, the show where I, Joe Bielecki, talk to writers about writing. Very often those writers have been recommended to me by people who have previously been on the show. In the case of this month's guest, Jay Besemer, he was recommended to me by M4 Writer. Jay is a poet and artist, the author of numerous poetry collections, including The Horse from Overneath Books 2025, Your Tongue is as Long as a Tuesday from Knife Fork Book 2023, Men and Sleep from Meekling Press 2023, the double chapbook Wounded Buildings, Simple Machines from Another New Calligraphy 2022, and Theories of Performance from the Lettered Streets Press in 2020. He was a 2021 Lambda Literary Award finalist for transgender poetry and a finalist for the 2017 Publishing Triangle Award for trans and gender variant literature. You can find him online at jbesemer.net and on Blue Sky at Divine Taylor. Watch out for a volume of visual photo collage poetry, Dear Father, Safe at Present, coming soon from Steel Incisors, and an anti-memoir, On Being Half Imaginary, out from Overneath Books in late 2025. If you would like to support this show, Writing the Rapids, you can do so at patreon.com/noisemakerjoe for just $2 a month. You get these episodes a little bit earlier than everybody else. You can also toss a one-time donation over at paypal.me/noisemakerjoe, or you can buy my book. It's called Tired. It's pretty good. If you can't or don't want to spend money, that's totally understandable in these times and previous ones, and almost certainly future ones. Just tell a friend about the show, post about it, blog about it, tweet about it, write about it in your newsletter, and like, comment, and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Jay. I have seen you post, well, actually, no, I think you said it in chat in one of our private conversations prior to right now, that you are most well known for your book, The Horse. And I feel like you are one of the few people who I've had on who has had kind of like a career of any sort of significant length, it seems to me. And that may not be entirely true. That's how it feels in this moment. But I am curious, from your perspective, why do you think The Horse has been the most widely read, talked about, successful, whatever word you'd like to use? Why do you think The Horse is it?
Well, actually, the one I think is my best known work is actually Chelate, which I did not send you. It's one that I might have sent you. It's my it's the second book that Brooklyn Arts Press put out when they were still going, and it's also the second book in what I call my trilogy. The reason that I say that it is probably the work I'm most known for, it has to do with, I think it's because it was most associated with me as a trans poet, because the trilogy I conceive of that as a trilogy because all three books were written during the process of early medical transition. So everything was just out of control. I mean, it was like, it was like I was turned inside out, actually. Everything was completely overwhelming and emotionally intense. And so I think a lot of people who either were/are going through that, or are about to go through that, or have gone through that, really found a lot to connect to in the book. And, you know, like my other works, it's not so much descriptive of, you know, and here I'm injecting testosterone, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's not a narrative of what I did in transition to transition. It's pretty much just walking around with an inside out body and what that's like, and that I think probably, I guess that encapsulates a lot of other people's experience in transition. Although who knows, I don't claim ever to speak for anybody else, and I'm certainly not, representative of any singular, dominant narrative of trans experience. It's everybody's experience is all over the place. Anybody with a body, their experience is all over the place. It doesn't matter what, your embodiment is. So, trying to sort of, I seriously resist anybody trying to say that I represent the trans experience any more than, you might feel kind of squeamish about, like, okay, the cis male experience is like, no, I don't think that really is something you'd want, So, and I think one reason that my work does appeal so much to some people is that it is so both deeply embodied and, I almost want to say, anonymous, or like, there's no self. It's all sensation, maybe, or I don't know. There isn't much of a, and this is my ego coming through. At least, I mean, I hope not. That's not a goal of mine.
Yeah, I dig it. Yes, speaking, Open Mike Eagle has a couplet of lines in his song, Dark Comedy, maybe, where he essentially says, I'll paraphrase, but he's like, I don't assume that I am speaking for all black men, but also don't assume that I can't. Which is an interesting dichotomy there too. I am personally, as a cis man, only fairly recently kind of again, or maybe in my post, being awoken to the systems of Western capitalism, becoming comfortable and confident in like happily being a cis man, right? Simply because of how it felt that it what it represents. In that, like, if your algorithm gets you in a certain mode, it can feel like everybody thinks you're really dangerous all the time. And it it changes how you move throughout the world. Like there was a time where if I needed to go in an elevator and I saw a woman go into an elevator and there was nobody else in there, I would just blow past the elevator and take the stairs.
Oh yeah.
And like, that's not a nice feeling. But so only like just recently am I like, yeah, like I actually really enjoy being a man. I enjoy being in my body. I think it's fine for me to be who I am, sort of thing. But also, like, yes, like there are elements of maleness that I feel completely alienated from. Anytime I read anything by Andrea Dworkin about men, it feels like she's talking about a completely different species of animal from what I'm existing in. And men feel this way, and it's like, they do. A joke I made to my wife at one point was like, I could have been getting away with that this whole time.
Consider the source. Andrea Dworkin is describing there is a lot of biological essentialism across the board in what she writes. So I think she is describing a completely different animal.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a couple of things that I thought of as you were speaking. I was reminded that, you do sometimes, I've seen you post similar things about just, your experience of who you are physically, and I think I'm getting the impression that your joy with your kid is part of what made you come around to be at peace with who you are. And I think, there's a lot of beauty in that. And I think it's not necessarily, it's not a cis only experience, which is also beautiful. But I think that when the fact that you are public about that joy and just all the love that opens up in your daily experience, that is unusual. It doesn't matter what your embodiment is. That's a very special, generous thing to do. And I just, I'm glad to have the opportunity to say to you that, hey, I noticed that. And I think it's wonderful. I think it's just a wonderful thing to put into the world. And I'm really honored to witness it. And it just, I don't know, I'm hugging myself here because I'm glad that, I don't know, I'm just glad to know you. So,
Well, thank you. I'm glad to know you too. And I'm glad that you noticed that and appreciate it. I was speaking with my wife about this the other day. She was talking about, she's still on Facebook, God's bless her. And we'll see posts about the hashtag boy moms and just how incredibly unhinged some of these women are about their sons, about their toddler sons, and thinking about giving their sons away to their future wives, and he was mine first, and
God.
And I was talking about how on my social media feeds, I don't use Facebook, but I'm on Instagram. I won't see very much parental content really at all. Usually when I do, it's funny. But there is I was talking to her about how what I post about fatherhood is intentional and with a sort of political praxis motive too, right? I'm saying it explicitly here, but there is an implicit this is how I think you should be viewing parenthood. This is how I think you should be viewing children. And while my wife was pregnant, I went on to the anarchistlibrary.org and read the very scant amount of articles and papers they had on parenting. And there's not a lot of literature, at least easily readily available, about anarchist parenting. But and I don't claim to be the best father ever, though some may claim that I am. I won't do it. Um, it feels really good. It feels, as a person who grew up playing video games, like, being able to recognize a win and like, and knowing how to get to it. Like, going into a situation with my kid that I know will be stressful for her, prepping her for it, and then reacting myself in a helpful way to her when and if she does become stressed or overwhelmed or whatever. Like, that feels good. Like, I know what the outcome is, and knowing that I can do it feels good, right?
Right. Yeah.
I will also say, because it is very important, I think, for me to say that part of my the other part of coming around to embracing my maleness has everything else to do with the women in my life who I am close to, who kind of understood that I needed to hear "you're a good man" and will relentlessly tell me that. Right? So, like, because without that validation, it's scary for me to assert it, right? I can assert it now that, yeah, I'm the paragon of masculinity, of at least white masculinity. Like, yeah, I am peak cis man. I am the standard by which everyone else should be measured. Because I got a crew of people backing me up. So yeah, that's, I don't know how I got to talking about myself, but yeah,
Because
okay.
I made you. No, because I enticed you into.
You
See, I'm clever that way.
you sly dog, you had me monologuing.
Ha ha ha.
I was going back through our chats. You simply suggested that I pick up the horse. So I'll turn around my first question, and question you. Why did you suggest that I order the horse?
Ah, well, it's the most recent poetry collection that has come out, and um, it's also very easy to get hold of because I put it out myself through Lulu, so you can just, hit Lulu up and it's, piece of cake. And it it's something that it's a project that is close to my heart. It's a heavy project. And it was one that was very, I wrote the book itself. My mother was still alive. It was, I think, her last year of life. So I think it was around, I think the full writing of the first draft was in 2018. So it's taken a while for it to come out because it was battered around by various presses. Like not it just made the rounds of various presses over the years, and it was like rejected, but with a request to send it the next year to a press that then stopped putting out books. So at that point it was stalled, and I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to do this myself when I get the chance, because I really want it to be out in the world. For a number of reasons, I really needed closure. And also I just sort of, I needed closure on the period of life that was encapsulated by the book, but I also needed closure for the project itself, like the book as a book. I needed it to be out in the world. And um, I basically felt like the best and easiest way to do that was to set up my own self-publishing mechanism. And honestly, I'm going to continue self-publishing because it's I feel like I'm still sort of keeping the schedule that I can support in terms of, I can't really get myself to. I don't have the energy to promote a book or promote more than like 2 books a year. And so if I'm the one putting them out, I get to decide when that happens and when I'm at the most, we have the most energy reserves to spare to put to this stuff. And the glorious thing about self-publishing is also that, I get to keep most of the funds that come in, bar the whatever the platform takes to produce the book. Um, so that's been really great. I mean, I still do get royalties from um, the books that generate royalties, but this is also like it's better than royalties. It's more of a percentage than a royalty. So I'm stoked. I like I like self-publishing. I obviously I have a different angle on it, having, as you pointed out already, a number of books of put out by other presses. Um, it's easier for me to say, okay, I'm coming at it from. I'm not sort of working up to someone else taking my book from self-publishing. It's the other way around. So it makes it a lot easier to sell these things because people know my name, they know my work. I have an audience now. I'm not trying to build an audience, which I think makes a huge difference in the attractiveness of self-publishing. um, So yeah, and actually, the funny thing is, there's another association with the horse. It all started from another podcast, the Waves Breaking podcast, that Avron Keating put out. I was a guest on that podcast. I don't remember even when, a long time ago, and Avron asked. They made an observation that horses appear in my books a lot. And they asked, what gives? What's with the horses? And I was like, what? I had never noticed that I have lots of horses in my books. So we talked about that a lot, and I was like, you know, oh, you're right. Oh my God. And and because they had clearly done their work. They're like, oh, here's this, and here's this poem with it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I see. It had to be pointed out to me. Honestly, I can't tell you. I have no idea. And then you may have seen in reading the horse that in the acknowledgments I say, I give a shout out to Avron and to the podcast, because without that question, that book would not have been written, because I was trying also to, poke at the question, like, what are all these horses doing in my, like, what are they meaning? And then there was the poem in there that was dedicated to Avron, in which I sort of answer the question, or at least I give one answer to the question. Um, and you may have the book there,
Yeah, I'm flipping through it.
but I
I'm
I
gonna
don't
find it.
have it within reach. So
Yeah. Um, it's interesting to me, the image of the horse. Um, I feel like appears a lot in um a lot of like kind of weirdo like pop punk music I used to listen to in college too. Um
Huh.
or like not even pop punk necessarily. The Math the band references horses so much. Um and I guess even kind of just my dog is whining at me in the door.
Yeah,
I don't know
I
what he wants from
I
me.
heard.
Um he can't really easily get to his bed. My office is a whole disaster. Um, but like Band of Horses, Horse the Band, there's the song Goodbye Horses. For whatever reason, like within music of my childhood and adolescence, horses appear a lot. So it was um my it created a through line in my brain to this book where I was like, yes, what is it about, you know, lyric and horses? Um, especially kind of, I don't know, outside the mainstream or within a more underground DIY sort of milieu. Like for whatever reason, horses are just kind of appearing.
Hmm.
And I also, again, I don't know why. Um,
Seems like it's a much deeper question and a much deeper association than a lot of us know what to do with. Like, I mean, I wrote a book trying to explore what that is, and maybe all these songs are coming out of that too. Like, you know, is the horse standing in for a person or I mean a human, not horses or people, but or maybe a process or a relationship or yeah, what is that? What I think that there's also the historic just part of human culture that that human and horse symbiosis kind of it's so ancient and it's so compelling. I think there's so much in it that can stand up to that kind of questioning. It feels to me like it's always evolving, and yet now horses in this sort of you know AI world, like who horses anymore? It's such a northern hemisphere. Uh, you know, the global south has more horse reliance than the global north, and in the global north, it's luxury and wealth and whatever. It's like a horse as a status symbol, and I don't think that's what the the band you're talking about was getting at.
no.
It's I don't think it's so much what I was getting at either. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of a complicated image or a multi-layered image because you can think about the horse representing the freedom of the West, possibility, things like that. You mentioned in that poem a beast of burden, but it's also like a really beautiful animal too. So it's sort of
Yeah.
like aesthetically above its station as a beast of burden. It's not like a cow or a mule or something or an ox. It's got more kind of like majesty to its form. Um, I I joke that if I have any sort of genetic memory, it's tied to horse riding. I'm mostly Polish and Hungarian, and those are very, like, Hungarians are, kind of a steppe culture, or
Yeah.
the Magyar people, the steppe
Yeah.
peoples came into
The steps. Yeah.
that basin. My computer is just gonna keep making noises all podcast. That's great. And
They're not showing up on my.
no, but they'll come through on my channel the way I have my mixer
Oh
set up,
no.
which is
Oh well.
it's fine.
Yeah.
And the Polish had the hussars, the kind of
Sure.
like post night with the big wings and everything. So, like, I joke that if I have any sort of genetic memory, it has to do with horses, and I do feel like anytime I see a horse, I'm like, I gotta get on that. I bet it would let me ride it. I'm kind of like a horse girl at heart, with the whole, like, I bet any horse could feel the genuine peace and calm I have within my heart and let me ride it, no matter how wild. I've got a little bit of that in me. And we had a friend of the family growing up who lived, like, across the road from someone who had horses. I don't know if it was the friend of the family's horses being kept there, or if there was just some sort of agreement where it was totally fine to bring these children over. But yeah, like, I rode a horse as a child and fed him sugar cubes and the whole bit, and she was like, "You're doing really well, let's start trotting." And we started trotting, and I was totally unprepared for how bumpy of a ride that was, and ended it, like, immediately. So I think there's some poetry there to adult me being like, oh yeah, I could, I'm the reincarnation of some Polish guy who fended off the Ottomans, when in reality I didn't like the bumpy horse trot. So the other thing about the horse, the book, is, of course, this sort of the display. That's, I don't know. You have spaces. The lines are segmented. And that's something I come across every now and again in poetry. I just had Jenkin Benson on, and his book, Are You Rocking With This? Are We Rocking With This? Sorry, is has that as well. And when I stray into more experimental or ergodic circles, the poetics get more crazy with their placement on the page. My goodness. Got fire trucks going on, computers making noise, dogs whining. I live in a city, hooray. So yeah, I'm interested in that in the horse, as Your Tongue Is As Long As a Tuesday, or kind of prose poems, and theories of performance look much more like how one would imagine a poem looks if you were to tell a lay person to imagine a poem. So I guess I like that you gave me 3 different presentations of your poetics. But at this juncture, I'm interested in how why you chose to do that with the poems and the horse.
Well, I'm glad that you. It was on purpose that I gave you a range of my poetics, and that it included theories of performance, because that's the one I recommend to people who just want a place to start, because it is. It's got a little of everything. There's whack-doodle experimental stuff in there, as well as more, I guess one would call, traditionally lyrical arrangements of words on a page. But one of the things that theories of performance is very clear about is my experience as a poet and awareness of the reader as, we all got these bodies, right? Like I was saying, reading is a physical process, just like writing is. Writing poems is a deeply physical process, and it's, in theories of performance, I was clear about providing spaces to breathe and rest throughout the book. And even if you didn't take me up on those particular spaces, it was an encouragement to find spaces of your own to, whatever you needed to do. Breathe, pee, go to sleep, eat something, change a diaper, whatever. And that's natural as part of being a body in the world, experiencing what you experience, including the poetry. From the point of view of what I was doing in the horse, the use of the page, the way I put the words on the page. Remember how when I was talking about my difficulty speaking, and I did a little imitation of the way sometimes my words come out in little blubs. Well, that's exactly what was going on the page of the horse. And what it was that I was under so much stress that I couldn't breathe very much, or I could not take very deep breaths. And so when I was actually speaking, and I had to do a lot of like pretty cognitively draining speech, like talking to my mother's doctors and care team and trying to make sure that communication was, and it was just me. It was all just me. I'm not going to get into the details of that, but the stress comes out on the page through the way I use the page and space the words. So each poem is kind of like a little map of, or not a map, but more of like a Polaroid of how I'm trying to function in, on each page. It's like, okay, what's the crisis today? Or, what's my experience that's almost killing me now, and then, but there's still also some beauty in it. There's a lot of beauty in the book, and I'm trying to hold on to that beauty in as much as I can. And so it's like putting, I'm jabbing my thumb at the screen. It's as though I'm sticking a thumbtack in something. It's like sticking a fortune cookie to a cork board, and and so you get this little image of a line of brief texts on a cork board, bulletin board, and that's kind of what the page was like, and basically I was trying to get this stuff out of me before I lost it. I mean, before I lost my shit, for one thing, and also before I lost the words, because it was really important to get the words out, so that's, you can think of it as each pause being that sort of desperate in breath that I had to take, but then also, because that's a lot of breaths on a page, that's also a representation of how, especially when I'm really stressed or fatigued, it, if I'm trying to get words out of my actual mouth, they come out blip, 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 blip. And there's a lot of gaps between them. So there you go. That's the poetics of my page spacing. It's a very physical backstory.
Yeah, I like that. I was remembering elementary school as I was thinking about this question, and you telling me your answer. I was thinking about in elementary school during one of the English classes, we were talking about italics and like what does italics mean? And of like everything, it had kind of the least definite answer. It's like sometimes it means inner monologue, or sometimes it's like for tone or for emphasis, but it's different from bold. If it's for emphasis, it's a different kind of emphasis. Or it's just normal text. It's just normal text. Underlined, means something's important. Bold means something's important, but in a different way. Titles are underlined. Quotations denote speech. But italics are this sort of like everyone's using them in a different way sort of thing. And there is a set list of easy possibilities it could be. So contextually, you can see, okay, this is actually what it is in this text, and this is what it is in this text. But the sort of spacing within a line that I don't even have a technical word for in my repertoire is something that I see and I guess haven't even really asked about very much before. Probably for fear of sounding like I don't know what I talk about or what I am talking about. But I mean, I also just straight up didn't know in this case. So asking deepened my understanding of the text. So, there you go, dear listener. Don't be afraid to ask questions, even if you think they may make you look silly.
I think the best questions are the ones that people are most afraid to ask because they're afraid they'll look silly. Because they're always the most interesting. They're always the most interesting to answer, and they're obviously the most interesting to ask because, they're a little risky. They're, whatever. But yeah, no, in general, I think most poets love to be asked why they did what they did on the page because there's always a story, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's always some like, what? I would never have guessed. So yeah. But and I do a lot of I mean I have a theater background. I do my writing with like I said, a full embodiment. I'm always I'm present physically, and I always in a way keep in mind what I'm not like I'm not a slam poet. I don't, it's not that kind of performance poetry, but it is, a book is a performance. Each page is a location in which a poem is performed. It's, maybe not performed with a voice, but it is, not a spoken voice, not an audible voice, but there's definitely, there's something there, and I've done a lot of interviews about that. So there's material that can be discovered in which I talk about that. But yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea that a poem or a book of poems is a performance. Like I was saying, I think before we were recording, I at one point was going to this monthly open mic, poetry open mic, and reading poems that I had been working on. Mostly I was going like as a way to make sure that I was writing more,
Sure.
particularly poetry, because like, silly rules I make up for myself. One of those rules was like, you're not going to read the same poem twice. And like, it was like 10 people in a little room, and it was mostly the same people every month, right? So like nobody wants this white guy to show up and read his sad boy poems, the same one every month. Nobody wants that. So you got to write a couple new poems. And I don't know, writing 3 poems in a month at least, that are good enough to read aloud to a room of 10 people was enough to get me writing poetry fairly frequently. I have since not been keeping up with going, and as such have not been writing as much poetry. But it's interesting because I had not considered like the stuff I was writing to be all that auditory. I feel like I was, prior to doing these open mics, concerned more with making it an interesting visual experience. Not to say that I was doing ergodic stuff all over the page, but like I was maybe amateurishly like trying to make it so that line breaks were very intentional, so that like things had double meanings, or even were like contradictory if you only read the line and not the subsequent line.
Sure.
Stuff like that. Just very like interested with that. Words that look like other words, and that sort of thing. And then, a lot of that is either lost as you read it aloud to someone who doesn't have the text in front of them, or changed, or becomes less important than, the meaning of the words, or that sort of thing. So like that experience shifted my lyrical priorities, I guess. And again, now that I'm away from it, it's like, oh, okay, what's the next poem going to look like? And again, like, I also don't very much consider myself a poet, and as I was writing poems to go to the open poetry mic nights, was like not considering myself a poet. It was just like, well, the open mic wants poetry, and it's at a bookstore I feel comfortable in and hosted by a person I feel comfortable with. So I'm going to do it as a way of getting out of the house, making sure I write. They told me to write poems, so we're writing poems. But yeah, so
It's funny, there are so many people who write poetry but have a little bit of squeamishness about calling themselves poets. And it's interesting because I can definitely relate to that. I mean, but from the flip, because I primarily consider myself a poet, and yet I'm, working on I'm in pre-production for this. I've been calling it variously anti-memoir, auto theory, whatever. It's this is my, galley of, oh my God, egregious layout problems,
mm-hmm.
But so that's it's prose, it's nonfiction prose. So that's, I can do that because it's a because I know the story, and it's not a linear narrative. It's prose, but it's not a linear narrative. And I don't have to try to keep track of a plot. I can't write fiction for shit. I can't keep my brain around any plot at all, and so like I'm in awe of the fiction writers that I know, because I just can't get my brain to work that way. But somehow that is okay, and that's one reason why I'm a poet is, that's how that's how my words come in my thoughts anyway. That's how I have to communicate. So, and then it, I'm not trying to, tell a story. I'm trying to pass along an experience in such a way that it brings about the experience in the reader.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little iffy in some ways in terms of ethics, but that I have to be very careful of what kinds of experiences I evoke, because there's a hell of a lot of stuff that is in my life that I have experienced that no one should have to experience ever. And I don't want anyone else to ever have to experience those things. So I'm not going to write about those in great detail. I'm not going to throw them in my poems and make you take them in your body. And that's wrong. So, yeah.
That's fascinating to me. I've been thinking a lot about your posts with regard to harm that you've been making lately, and you had a piece on Olivia Cronk's blog recently. Mm-hmm. And I find myself, I don't think I've ever considered myself a pacifist. So that there's like the one thing. And my view on pacifism goes from like kind of like admiration of like, man, I wish I could do that. Like, I wish I could have like the faith in humanity that takes, or like the moral rigor that it takes to, on the other hand, on my bad days, like active frustration. And I don't know. I'm not gonna ever try to convince somebody to not be a pacifist, for sure. But it, like, especially right now, like, I think about it and I think about the things I see and the things I know you're going through and my other Chicago friends are going through. It's amazing how many people I know who are in Chicago. I feel like it is the place that has the most Writing the Rapids guests of like any other singular place, for whatever reason. Maybe Chicago people just know each other better, or something. Like maybe Chicago has more like a like, I don't know what that is. That's a tangent. But thinking about like harm and thinking about what you were saying about like not necessarily wanting to write about something because of like the effect that it could have on people. There's two things that come to mind whenever I think about harm and when I think about violence, kind of with regard to pacifism, but kind of like in general. I think about, there's stories of the Buddha like kicking people or slapping people and they like are immediately enlightened.
Right.
And I understand one like metaphorical story. I get it. But like on the other hand, like there is something about the shock to the system, that causes. The other thing I think about is, weightlifting. And how, like, to build muscle, you have to tear muscle. And how, like, weightlifting is a sort of self-harm, with the ultimate goal of improvement, right? Like it is an instant self-harm for a longer term gain.
Right.
And I think about those things, and so like I could be convinced that like doing violence against agents of the state is not the same thing as like slapping your buddy who said something misogynistic. And I don't know. I'm not necessarily interested in this moment to go into those places. I'm more just that is where your statement about like refusing to write about certain things in I don't know, certain depth or detail is interesting to me, especially since my first couple of manuscripts that I wrote, like novelistic things, I went in with the like this antagonism to the reader, or a like I want the reader to feel this particular type of bad. And I definitely like don't do that now. But that's a type of compassion that you kind of displayed that I don't think about much or consider. And I find it fascinating, especially I guess since too, like the other thing is within the too small scope of trans writers who I read, there's a lot of people who are writing really disturbing stuff that I like really enjoy reading, of course. So I guess you feel like kind of an outlier there in that. I don't know, you're like the only like very openly, one of two, maybe two or three, one of the few like very openly like practicing Zen people that I've talked to as well. So like that's probably where a lot of that is coming from. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, there's a way in which well, I've been a Buddhist for about 20 years.
Mm.
I started off in a Tibetan tradition, and then I found myself getting too heady, too intellectual about it, and it was too focused on attainment. To, I wanted to, I had a sense that I had to get somewhere
Mm-hmm.
with it, and I was pushing that. And then I caught up to myself and I was like, I don't think this is really what I need. I need something super simple. So then I started doing Zazen on my own. And then I stopped even that. When I was caring for my mother, I didn't have the stretch of time, which is, I would have benefited from it a great deal had I had a sense that that was something I had access to at the time, but it, it didn't feel that way. So I went without it. And, oh, I don't know, a little over a year ago, I decided I really needed a teacher and I needed to find a Sangha, a Zen Sangha. And I was very lucky to find the teacher and the Sangha that I am with now. And I think that part of what has made me compassionate, I mean, I've been that way my whole life, and I've been through some shit my whole life. So I think that's what it is. There's a point at which having been harmed leads you to want to harm others. And then you move beyond that point. That's a stage you go through, and then you if you're lucky, you don't keep going through it. Something changes, and then it's different. Then something different happens. And what I found was that I get physically sick when I do harm. And so, and I know I have in the past been an incredibly violent person. I have taken up arms against people I love. And I know that if I did that now, I would vomit all over myself and get a high fever and collapse, and that would be that. I would have to deal with the consequences of even making an attempt to harm someone. And so I know that even in self-defense, I will have a very high physical price to pay if I harm someone, And that's a toughie because, every day I think about what will I actually do when they come for me? And I can't answer that question because the thing about pacifism is that you can't answer the question until you're in the point at which it's life and death. And, I can't answer the question of will I remain nonviolent throughout the duration, of every danger I encounter, because, I don't know. All I know is the consequences I will bear for doing violence. And that's just me. I'm not even talking about, imprisonment or anything like that, you know? And so, and that's a result of changes that have been, I've seen happen, I've experienced, through the course of Buddhist practice. I'm not assigning a causal relationship because there's been a lot of other stuff alongside that, like, deep intensive therapy and, aging, it's like, there's a multivariable set here, but, so I think a lot of people look at Buddhist nonviolence and they think, oh my God, it's such control. It's not control at all. It doesn't have a thing to do with control. It has a thing. It's all about presence in each moment as it comes and total awareness of what you're experiencing. And then you make a choice. The choice could be do nothing. The choice could be help that person. The choice could be run. The choice could be, punch the Nazi. Each choice is going to have consequences. And you don't really know what those are going to be. You have to be prepared to make the choice and take the consequences. And so after a number of years of practice, you begin to know that you can trust yourself to take those consequences. That's the way I see it. And that's the way I experience it. And that, I find a lot of relief in that because, holy shit, it's not about control. I don't have to be good, I just have to be. I just have to be this, weirdo. I just have to be this weirdo poet who, just has a lot of love and has a dorky cat and loves Doctor Who and whatever, cooks Indian food. So that's, you know, I'm open about being a Buddhist, partially because that's where I am in my practice. I'm heading towards, we just fixed the date. My tradition, I practice in the Soto Zen tradition, and in Soto Zen, you can take a lay ordination. And in December, I'm finally going to take my lay ordination. So, um, part of why I'm so open about the practice is that once you take a lay ordination, you are doing bodhisattva work in the world. You are working towards the benefit of all beings. And I strongly feel that as, you know, that's what I'm doing here. That's part of what my work is about, and that's what my social media presence is about. And it's, you know, how I do mutual aid and whatever else emerges in terms of, you know, how I am, like, dude freaking out in the waiting room at the doctor's, you know, what can I do here to be of service? You know, I mean, it's very much point of sale, as it were. You know, you got to go out in the world and be present, and whatever going out in the world is, you know, that includes social media to the extent that one can tolerate it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, it means setting your own boundaries and making sure you're as safe as you can be to do the work, you know. It's really important. So that's what I'm about. Because we were talking about it, and I thought, you know, it's only fair. We've been talking about this damn poem, and people got to know what we're talking about. Okay, so this is The Horse, and it's from The Horse, and it's dedicated, as I mentioned before, to Avron Keating. I never guessed when making my choice what that M would bring. Smearing, sticking to the skin, tangling the hair. But I think I've found out what the horse is, Avron. I think the horse is the man of me, a beast of burden, beautiful as a squall line, a being both loved and fended off, simultaneously beside, under, surrounding, and within. Or a better mule others find potential in and think of many uses for. A tool, but never mind, I'm still good at dramamania and throwing what's been put on me. In infancy, I wouldn't play patty cake. I wouldn't play along. I stared wide-eyed at others and ate the crickets from the cellar. And now these hooves stick in the mud. The world's been made, and I can't move beyond my shade. That's true, by the way. I did stare wide-eyed at others. I wouldn't play patty cake, and I ate the crickets from the cellar. Now I'm going to read something from Your Tongue is as Long as a Tuesday, which was published in 2023 by Knife Fork Book, Toronto Press, run by the fabulous Kirby. And it's a beautiful book as far as like bookness goes. It's got lovely paper, and you know, you can like rub it all over your body like I'm doing, and it's very nice as a textured thing. I'm trying to figure out which is the best. Maybe I'll just do the last one because that's a good. One of the things about this, it's a series of linked prose poems that are, well, on one level, it's fan poetry. The character, there's a me character, and then there is a semi-imaginary character who is actually an actual character in a Star Trek franchise show. I don't want to get too detailed about it, but there is a way in which this can be classed as fan poetry, but I do okay, this is a good one. Because it's linked, each piece is linked, it can be difficult to pull one out to sort of choose. So this is, I'm gonna, on page 34, it's 5D. Your tongue is as long as a Tuesday. I believe in you. I can't admit this to you. You won't have it. I'm learning what my love means when it holds you. You are like me. The words are not the actions, and the actions are what we carry or how we carry each other. The circling, the times we follow each other through the unendurable. Your rough shoulder under my palm. The light that takes hold of us during sex. How joy can happen in the least imaginable ways.